Welcome to the Art Talks, the shows where we explore architecture's past, present, future with some of the most forward-thinking minds in the field. Today we have a really special guest, Kemal. Welcome, Kemal. A researcher who has worked extensively on the ideas of Rainer Bayham, particularly his interpretations of functionalism and modern cities. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I am happy to discuss these ideas.
Let's start with functionalism. It was the acceptable thing in the 1930s, yet Benham implies the physically wasn't accepted. Can you account for this?
Yes, functionalism was too often reduced to the slogan, an apology rather than a genius design philosophy. The slogan form follows function. For example, became an embodiment rather than a principal theme form. Most 1930s architects misinterpreted functionalism as a solely rational design exercise, revising the rigid determinism of the 19th century, something that individuals such as Le Corbusier and Gropius initially rejected.
So the term was being used without full appreciation of the richness.
That's right, there was a way to serve, but not symbolic significance. Modern architecture in the 1920s carried a sense of gravity and international beyond function. By the 1930s, however, many of the late Arabic architects to the movement, especially those such as Germany, France, and Netherlands, missed the ideological debate that undergirded its early decisions. They applied functionalism narrowly, seeing it merely as an economic and logical response rather than a symbolic and artistic revelation.
You have also studied the political and economic pressures on the modern architecture. During this period, how did these pressures shape the movement?
The 1930s were a difficult time for the international style. It was politically banned in Germany and Russia, economically ailing in France, and encountered the indifference in places like fascist Italy, England, and the Great Depression-stricken United States. Given these constraints, its promotion for aesthetic or symbolic purpose could be provocative. Architects concentrated on its economic and logical benefits instead. While this permitted the movement to survive, it also implied it of some of its original depth.
Interesting. Let's now turn to Baham's perpetuation of the cities. He felt that cities shaped by industrialization have been incapable of staying abreast of technological progress. What do you think about that?
Cities nowadays, and especially those shaped by early industrialization, have been slow to come to grips with the rapid evolution of new technology. The international style attempted to architectural domination age, but did so imperfectly. Think of Gropius car designs for Adler in the 1930s. They were minimal compositions that were unsuccessful in articulating the revolutionary transformations than being achieved in car design. The same issue applies to city design. Architecture remained static while technology evolved at an acceleration pace.
Did architecture fail to embrace the dynamism of technology?
Exactly. The 20th century technological revolutions demand flexibility, yet architects constantly clung to fixed typologies. Cities continue to be designed according to outdated principles instead of being constantly designed to address emerging technological realities. This disparity has to lead to urban design inefficiency and the lack of real integration of architecture and technology.
That brings us to the influence of the Industrial Revolution on the architecture. We have noted that while new materials and techniques become possible, architecture didn't necessarily engage with them successfully. Can you discuss that?
That's right. The Industrial Revolution introduced new materials like steel and glass, which enabled minimalist and functional designs. However, just because a building used new materials, it didn't always mean that it was entirely modern. There were buildings that appeared modern and outward appearance but were still beholden to old design concepts.
So there was a gap between appearance and technological progress.
Precisely. The shift away from ornamentation and toward functionalism and efficiency was deep, but not always with a full understanding of the potential for technological transformation. Architecture related to struggling to keep up with the pace of industrial and technological innovation. This creates the tension between traditional ways of designing and the need for constant adjustment.
Looking forward, what do you think architectures need to do bridge this gap?
They must embrace an ongoing iterative design process, one that evolves alongside technological advancement and rather than trying to implement fixed solutions. Cities and bodies must be designed with flexibility so they can evolve as new technological emerge. True contemporary architecture is not about looks alone. It's about responding intelligently to the conditions of the future and present.
That's a powerful constellations. Thank you for being on the show today and your insights.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for another Talks episode. More discussion on the evolving world of architecture coming right up. See you next time.
Welcome to Architalks, the show in which we discuss the past, present, and future of architecture with the leading thinker and practitioners. Today we have the pleasure of a special guest, Ahmet, an architecture who on more illustrations to very topic. We are here to discuss complexity, contradiction, and richness of architectural experience. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here and to have the chance to discuss the enduring impact of Robert Venturi's thought.
Let's dive right in. Venturi questioned the simplicity of modernism so famously and asserted that complexity and contradiction are not just inevitable but necessary in architecture. Why do you think that argument remains so compelling today?
Exactly. Architecture is not function or aesthetics by itself. Venturi saw buildings as complex experiences, as literature or paintings. When modernist architects advocated purity and clarity, they stripped architecture of its depth. He reacted with the idea that architecture must have multiple meanings, accept paradox, and design buildings that engage people in different ways.
Precisely, and he was also very critical of the modernist slogan, less is more. He responded with less is a more. What do you think he meant by that?
He was fighting against the idea that simplicity for simplicity's sake was an objective. Modernists like Mies van der Rohe were looking for extreme minimalism, but Venturi argued that this led to dead buildings. Instead of removing contradictions, he believed that architects should resolve them, allowing for richness, ambiguity, and surprise.
He drew analogies to other disciplines, referencing Gödel's insipidness theorem, the Petrov, T.C. Eliot, and Joseph Abrams' color theories. How do these analogies enrich his architectural vision?
These references are all to how other disciplines embrace complexity. Eliot's poetry thrives on many levels of interpretations. Albert's art plays with perception and contradiction. Venturi saw architecture in the same way, a discipline where meaning is not fixed, but active and multifaced. Buildings like poems or paintings should engage investigation and personal interpretation.
One of his great criticisms of modernism was that it had a tendency to simplify. Can you provide us with an example where this simplification in his view went too far?
Of course, he pointed to Philip Johnson's Willey House, for example, where functions were separated so rigidly that the result was sterile. Another example is how modernists used to praise historic temples for their simplicity, when they are actually extreme complex in proportions, detailing, and spatial effects.
Venturi also writes a lot about ambiguity in architecture. Why do you think that is such an important concept?
Due to the fact that ambiguity allows for engagement, a building should not be one unique, definitive statement. Take Le Corbusier's Ville Savoy. It's seemingly perfectly ordered from the outside, but spatial relationships inside are full of surprise. Hagmoor's St. George in the East, likewise, displays perception in accordance with where you stand. Venturi believed that architecture, like good art, should allow for a number of different readings.
That play into his both and philosophy, embracing contradiction rather than choosing between opposites. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. Venturi rejected binary thinking. He argued that a building could be both modern and traditional, both functional and expressive. Le Corbusier's Sodden house, for instance, appears as a rigid cube, but the placement of windows disrupts the perception. Guarini's Immaculate Conception Church combines actual direction with a central plan. These contradictions add richness.
In effect, Venturi is asking for architecture to be as complex and nuanced as the life it shelters.
Exactly. He reminds us that buildings should not just function, but also intrigued, inspire, and surprise us. When we reduce architecture to function or beauty only, we lose the opportunity to make it meaningful.
Well said. As we wrap up, what do you think is Venturi's most enduring legacy?
I would say it's a reminder that simplicity is not a virtue in itself. There is only depth in architecture if you engage with and celebrate contradictions. His works challenges us to design for complexity so that architecture remains alive, interesting, and meaningful.
A good note to end on. Thank you for joining us today and for your insights.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to our audience for tuning into ArchTalks. Until next time, keep questioning, keep designing, and keep embracing the complexity of architecture. Goodbye.